Hello, everyone, and welcome to Divorcing Today with Jennifer and John. We have Jennifer Barkin on the show today, and although she has many different credentials and things that she does, we are going to talk to her today about the Voice of the Child report. So stay tuned.
Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you
Okay,
do?
so a little bit of back history. I went through my own divorce. I had two little kids. My kids were 9 months and 3 at the time. It was a very long time ago. And my older daughter was diagnosed with multiple special needs. So I was home for a long time. But when she became more independent, I went back to school again. Actually, I forgot. I did go back to school when my kids were babies. That's when I got my master's of social work. But I went back to school again and decided I wanted to be a family mediator. So I got all the training to become an accredited family mediator. And then I did my parenting coordination training, my certified divorce financial analyst training. What else did I do? A whole bunch. A voice of the child report training. So, and on and on and on. And I opened up my practice, which is called Family Matters Mediators and Counselors. And I work with people in different aspects of their divorce and separation, including a lot of counseling for families and children post divorce. So that's what I do.
That's a long resume, and it's
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
that you love to help out families and the children, and that's wonderful. Can you tell me a little bit about Voice of the Child so that people who aren't 100% sure what that is, we can clarify that for them?
Okay. So a voice of the child really came from what's called the Hague Treaty, where the Hague Treaty, which is the treaty that a bunch of countries signed saying children should have a voice in matters that concern them. So they have a right to have their needs, wishes, and wants heard. And that's where that voice of the child really originated. So what is it? Well, firstly, it's not parenting time and decision making formally custody and access assessment. It's not a formal assessment by any means. Rather, it's part of ADR, which is alternative dispute resolution, where parents voluntarily, along with the children, have to agree to get this voice of the child report done. And what it is, it's a report stating what the children's needs, wants, and wishes are for their lives post separation. So what happens? Well, everybody, agrees to it. That's the number one thing. But once that happens, the therapist is going to meet with each parent separately to get an idea of what they think is going on, what the children are like, because that therapist is going to have to build rapport with kids. Interviewing children is very different than interviewing adults. You'll never put a child on a couch or a chair and say, okay, so tell me what's going on in your life. Kid's going to be bored. Kid's not going to answer your questions. So firstly, that therapist is going to have to develop rapport. Once that happens, the therapist is going to ask a bunch of questions of what the child would like to see happen. And they're very open-ended questions. They cannot be leading questions. And whatever therapist asks of mom, about mom, the therapist has to word the question exactly the same about dad. So for instance, a question I might ask, tell me 3 really fun things about your mom. But then I'll have to say, tell me 3 really fun things about your dad, right? And so on. And I'll say, tell me 3 things that suck about being with your dad. Tell me 3 things that suck about being with your mom. Whatever it may be, it just has to be very balanced like that. Mm-hmm. The children are told that you can tell me anything, and I'm not going to take any of this information back to your mom and dad until we've reviewed it. And at any time you can say to me, you know what? I changed my mind. Don't say that. Don't tell them. And I have to respect the children's wishes. So this voice of the child report that I bring to the parents might be very, very long, and it may have really nothing in it. It all depends. The kids are in control, what they're going to allow me to take back to the parents. So it's not a formal assessment. The therapist is not going to make any recommendations whatsoever. Rather, I'm bringing back the children's voices verbatim of what they want to see happen, and the parents can choose to do with it what they want. So It can be very helpful when you have two parents that have different notions of what the parenting time schedule should look like. So this is a way of, well, what do my kids want to see? Right? And getting enlightened and getting some information. And often it's not about who the kids, prefer, nothing about that. It could be things like, well, if I stay at dad's house more, dad's house is half a block from my school. I have 5 friends on that street. So it has actually nothing even to do with mom and dad. It has to do with what's working best for me, the child, right? If you're getting to a formal assessment known as a Section 30, that is much more invasive. You're interviewing the teachers, the other professionals in the children's lives, the children, family members, and on and on. And at the end of collecting all of this information, the person who's conducted this Section 30 assessment is going to write a formal recommendation, which judges will take very seriously. So that's how they differ.
Great information. Would you say that there's an age appropriate time where a voice of a child's report would be?
Great question. Generally not before a child is about 5 years old, because the child really has to understand what's asked of them. But as importantly, not a chronological age. Why? Because the developmental age of a child and their ability to understand and to voice their opinions, their needs, and wishes is much more important. So if you have a 12-year-old that has developmental delays, you're not really going to get that information, where I can have an 8-year-old who can really say what they need to say.
So, do you have like any words of wisdom or best advice for listeners
regarding getting a voice of the child?
Yeah.
Okay. If you're stuck, or even if you just want to know what your kids want, a voice of the child is a terrific tool. Why? Because what we know, all of us who work in the area with families and divorce, kids that come from divorced households do every bit as well, research shows us, as long as they're not dragged into conflict. So you never ever want to ask your kids, what do you want to do? Don't put that in their hands. There's a couple of dangers. Number one, children are going to tell sometimes the more vulnerable parent, which is the parent that gets more upset and teary, what they want to hear, right? That's not necessarily the truth of what the child's really feeling. And sometimes children may tell both parents what they think that parent wants to hear. Mm-hmm. So the voice of the child is a good tool to get the information the parents need to make some very important decisions for their parenting plans without dragging kids into their conflict.
So after you sort of completed your piece of the puzzle, like now what would you refer then to a professional? What sort of like next steps, generally speaking?
Sometimes somebody needs an evaluation of their business. So business evaluators who I know are very good at what they do. Other family mediators who I know are very good at what they do. Family law lawyers, I'll ask a few questions, because I think when picking your family law lawyer, it's not a one size fits all. Is this a high net worth family, with a lot of assets for equalization? Is there a parent where there's safety concerns and somebody's really going to have to understand that? Has there been domestic violence? I'll want a family law lawyer who has a lot of experience in that realm. So I do refer out a lot because I have to.
When do you think it's appropriate to get the voice of a child report? So if I'm now separating and I have children, and I think that my ex and I are not going to be able to decide on the parenting schedule, and we want to figure out what's best for the children, when is the best time to use your services?
Often when people are splitting up, the fact is they can't communicate, or they can't communicate very well. So a mediator or a family law lawyer, when you're getting to the parenting piece or at intake or however you work, can say, this is available, you know, these are the benefits. Would you be interested? I can provide you with a list of people that do this. You know, if you're interested, why don't you call them, find somebody that you feel comfortable with that would be a good fit for your family, you know, with your situation. And you can get it done before mediation. It's a great tool to bring to mediation or to a lawyer.
Well, with that being said, Jennifer, how do people contact you?
Okay, so the easiest way is through my website, because I have everything on my website, you know, my email and my phone number. So my website is very easy. It's www.torontofamilymediation.ca.
Great.
Excellent. Listen, thanks for being on the show. It was very enlightening, and hope our viewers appreciate it. I know I did, and I'm sure they will, and hopefully they will contact you.
Thank you
Great
so much
insight.
for having me.
Wow, she provided great insight and why it's important to have voice of child, and how to and when it's appropriate to have one.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think that, you know, parents will tend to involve their children sometimes and unilaterally say something like, well, do you want to go to mommy's house or do you want to stay with daddy? But the thing is that if they are going to involve the children that way, of course the children are going to tell the parents that they want to hear, because they don't want to hurt the parent. And children are so much smarter than we give them credit for, and they will learn what parent will like what answers. So they will try to make them happy.
Yeah, and I also liked when the style of therapy, or the style of questions that she asked children in the setting, and I like that she's fair between, yes, the same questions for mom or about mom, and the same questions about dad.
Yeah.
But you know, in the beginning of the show, it was like, here's her resume. Like, how qualified is she? Right? Like, she is just a wealth of information, and you know, it sounds like very good-hearted.
Yeah, I love that about her. And I think that it's important for people to get a voice of a child report done if they are really wanting to know what their child feels without asking them. I want mom and dad to use that information not to hurt each other and be like, oh, you see, he wants to stay here. Or, you know, it's important for the parents to take that information and move forward with it in a grounded and respectful way so that everyone can benefit from it, as opposed to using it as ammo.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there as a tool to get two people, including the kids, to where they want to be, not add additional layers or additional obstacles to this process.
Right.
But thanks for tuning in, and see you next time on Divorcing Today. Now what, with John and Jennifer.